and welcome back to the Ron Paul Flick Show. My very special guest today is a great friend of mine, Adam Kokesh. Adam, thanks for joining us on the show today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Now, you just organised something that got absolutely no media attention whatsoever. It was a really, really big deal in Washington, D.C. Tell us what it was and why on earth did you get no media attention over it?
Well, to be fair, we got as much media attention as we could have gotten without them having to really address the issues behind what we were doing or discuss what was really going on. So for your viewers, let me just say we had a march for Veterans for Ron Paul 2012. We had 320 veterans and active duty troops marching in formation on the White House to do an about face and turn their backs on the White House in a symbolic repudiation of Obama's foreign policy. An interesting thing to note there was that we had about a fifth, my conservative estimate was about a fifth of the formation was active duty guys. Some of my squad leaders who went down the formation and were actually checking every individual's proof of service estimated that it was closer to 25 or 30%, which is really incredible if that's the case. But even if it was just 20%, that means we had 64 veterans, 60 plus active duty troops turning their backs on the White House. And we did this to salute a folded American flag that I held in front of me we did for 8 minutes, and that was supposed to be for 1 second for every soldier who's committed suicide since Obama took office. Of course, that's a rough estimate, and that's just active duty U.S. Army. That's not counting any of the other branches of service or any of the veterans who have committed suicide who are killing themselves at a rate estimated to be at least 18 per day here in the United States. I mean, it is a sick statistic. And, while a lot of those are older veterans, a lot of them are guys that never get counted, that are global war on terror veterans that have just gotten out of the service. And we did get a mention, CBS put us on their blog, Yahoo did a brief story, but the point is that they weren't able to elevate this to an issue that deserved to be addressed, because if they did, it would really challenge all of the premises of the mainstream media of why the troops support Ron Paul, having to address that, and having to face up to the reality of this military suicides issue. And if you're in the mainstream media and you're one of these people that has been selling Obama's foreign policy to the American people for 3 years now, and you're not realizing that there's some connection there between suicides among veterans and the foreign policy itself, there's a strong desire to deny that, to brush that under the rug, to just not acknowledge that sending people to fight and kill and die in wars without a clear moral imperative might just lead to some issues, might just lead to some wanting to question why they were sent there. And that's really what's behind Veterans for Ron Paul 2012. And as we know, Ron Paul is the choice of the troops because he's received more campaign contributions from active duty troops than all other candidates, including Obama combined. And every time I hear that statistic repeated in the mainstream media, it's dismissed, or they say it a little bit differently. Oh, he's got more campaign contributions this quarter from active duty soldiers, and they leave out then all other candidates combined, including Obama, or that it's been consistent since 2008's campaign that Ron Paul has always been the choice of the troops, and by this one measure at least. And this isn't to say that every single soldier knows of and supports Ron Paul, but the most exciting thing that I heard as a result of this march on the White House, and like I said, it was really great to see this community of veterans coming together. And if anything, that was as powerful as any way that we could communicate this message externally, to see that veterans were coming together and sharing their experiences and their emotions and their perspectives in a way that shows them that they're not alone. When the mainstream media gives you this impression that the troops support anybody but Ron Paul, or that this foreign policy that we're engaged in is somehow normal or healthy or essential for national security, it's easy to feel isolated. And it'd be like when you start questioning things, go, well, am I the only one that feels this way? And that was really there. But the most exciting part for me, the single best moment for me, I suppose, was hearing from an active duty Lance Corporal in the Marines. And, I was a Lance Corporal once myself, and he's in an intelligence unit with about 520 Marines. And he told me that all of them knew me by name, and most of them were Ron Paul supporters as a result. that was just the greatest encouragement from, warm my little former Marine heart. And I was really excited to see that we're having that kind of impact among the ranks. And when the Navy, there was a Navy attorney that sent out a letter warning people to not come to this event. So we had a lot of other active duty guys there who were not in uniform and were on the sidelines. They decided to observe a strict observation of observance only, non-participation in any kind of partisan political events. And we're standing on the sidelines there watching this event. We had at least a few squads from Fort Meade. So we're really reaching out, but as we said that night, that was just the warm-up for Veterans for Ron Paul.
Right. Now, and we'll get to the fact that you're about to do another march in Tampa. But something that really concerns me here is the suicides. The suicide rates that we're seeing now, are they any different to what we've seen in the past? Are they higher? And if they are, what do you think is causing them to be that way?
Well, there are two different numbers that are being thrown about, or different statistics. One is overall veteran suicides. And if you take into consideration that, we had 50,000 combat deaths in Vietnam, it was a different kind of war. It was much more intense combat-wise. There were a lot more individuals engaged in combat. We still have a lot of Vietnam veterans that are committing suicide every day, and that's another great tragedy. We have veterans of the Gulf War era that are committing suicide, many of them because they've been dealing with health issues around depleted uranium and all of the other vaccinations that they received during that era that were so dangerous. You have, now we've been in the global war on terror. We've been in Afghanistan for over 10 years. So, you have a lot of those guys that are out and that statistic kind of gets mushed together. They all get lumped in, and that, you can't really separate. You can, but in the statistics, they generally don't have the complete tracking ability to separate, Vietnam veterans and global war on terror veterans and veterans of this era, that era. And, there are so many that are both as well. We have a lot of veterans who served in the first Gulf War and were still around at least for the invasion of Iraq in 2003 or Afghanistan in 2001. So there's that, and that's a big statistic, and there's some interesting different evaluations of that going on right now. Generally speaking, that's been slowly going up, but relatively consistent, because the global war on terror discharge rate, the number of veterans that have come in and fought in the global war on terror and gotten out, is still relatively low compared to those existing veterans populations from previous conflicts. But what you do see an incredible rise in, which is what is really disturbing and what really should give everyone pause, is the active duty suicide rate. These are people that are under the current care of Obama as commander-in-chief, and they are committing suicide. And a lot of them are veterans who just haven't gotten out yet. They're guys who are still on active duty, and women who are still on active duty, who have come home and are waiting for that second, third, fourth, eighth deployment, going, I can't do that again. I just can't do that again. And that they are choosing to take their own lives rather than go back into theater, or rather than get out and try to lead a normal life is an incredible tragedy. And what we're seeing, reliable statistics are really hard, but what we used for our salute for the March on the White House was the estimates from the Army itself. And this is just, like I said, just the Army, just one branch of the military, and they're running at about a little over 150 active duty suicides per year. And for people that might try to dismiss that, it is very, very much significantly higher than the civilian statistics for suicide.
Well, it's very sad to hear, and obviously what we're doing overseas is having more than just an effect on the people we're firing bullets at over there. It's really having an effect on our people here.
Right, and this is why, in a sense, to me, the mainstream media coverage, it didn't really, the lack of mainstream media coverage didn't really bother me about this event, because there were two other things. I mean, one is that most people found out about it through the internet. Even though we got two big headlines on Drudge Report, which was great, but that was, even then, the mainstream media coverage was the CBS blog and Drudge Report and Yahoo. And people are finding out about this, and what I've been saying is that if you found out about this and you're glad that you found out about it, but you didn't find out about it on CNN, why are you still watching CNN? you know? And that's what's so exciting about the current media landscape and how it's changing and how the internet is revolutionizing this and giving us so many more tools. So I think, if anything, this gives us an opportunity to say, yeah, of course they didn't cover this event. What did you expect? That you learn your lesson and get your news somewhere else. But the other thing, the second thing that you reminded me of, which was so important in this event, is that we may have saved a number of lives. Right there, and then with that event, with the troops that were there. These are not people that are showing up for a good time. These are people that are showing up because they care from their experiences that have been traumatic for many of them, and they're passionate about what they believe in. They're passionate about getting Ron Paul elected. But also, they're still dealing with these issues. And for them, just knowing that they're not alone, being brought into a community of veterans who really care about our foreign policy, care about national security, care about the future of our country, and are willing to question the status quo, it's incredibly therapeutic and gives them hope in a way that Barack Obama as commander-in-chief doesn't.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Let's we're going to talk about the new march in just a second, but let's just cut to some clips of what you actually did there in Washington, D.C. Take a look at this.
Forward march!
For every soldier who has committed suicide while Barack Obama was their commander-in-chief, present arms!
Left.
We will now observe 1 second of silent prayer for every soldier who has died abroad with Barack Obama as their commander-in-chief. Let us pray. Amen. Detail! Attend! Hot! Left!
I can see there on those clips that people really took this quite seriously. This was not a game for them. This is something they're really, really very serious about.
Absolutely, absolutely. And some are speculating that H.R. 347, the anti-protest bill, was in response to this, that Obama was a little disturbed to see enough active duty troops turning their back on him in front of the White House to start a mutiny, that they didn't want to see that anymore. Also knowing that there were so many trained men and women who could have easily, if we had wanted to, jumped over that fence and probably taken a few casualties. But if we had really wanted to storm the building at that point, we wouldn't have needed a whole lot more to make that happen. And that's not a threat. That's not a threat. The Secret Service, I know you're listening. Please don't read into that. But you have to acknowledge that the commander-in-chief was probably not too happy about a formation of active duty troops and veterans turning their backs on him.
Yeah, I'm sure. Listen, let's lighten the conversation a little here. We've got some interesting questions from people on Facebook and Twitter. And one of them, now, I'm from New Zealand. Our national sport in New Zealand is rugby. And little birdie tells me you used to play some rugby. Tell us about that.
Well, I played rugby in college for the entire time I was there. I loved it. It was incredible. It was a great experience. I've always thought that the difference between rugby and football is the difference between what America was intended to be and what it has become. And really, the perversion of rugby into American football is symbolic of everything that America has done wrong since its founding. If you look at the sports, rugby was born in 1831 at the rugby school in England by Lord William Webb Ellis, who in flagrant disregard for the rules of the game as played in his day, picked up the ball and ran with it, inventing the modern game of rugby football. And now you know why football in America is called football, because they screwed it up. Football, as we know it today in America, was born not from an act of defiance, but from a meeting of college officials in a committee who decided that they were going to drop the word rugby instead of the word football, and kept it as football and made it American football. But really, if you look at the difference, rugby is a sport where you have 15 men on the field, or women, and although not at the same time, and they are independent decision makers. They are a team. The coach does not call plays from the sideline. All the coach can do is call substitutions, and every person on that field has to be responsible for meeting their job and for filling their role and for communicating and coordinating with other people. Everybody has to do that, and everybody has to be a responsible, independent decision maker, whereas football teaches the opposite. It teaches hierarchy. It teaches command and control. It teaches you to be a cog in the machine. And really, the symbolic destruction of rugby into modern American football, the perversion of it, you could say is symbolic of the perversion of what our country was supposed to be with the Articles of Confederation, the Declaration of Independence, to where we are now with a constitutional government that is totally run amok. But I played for the Marines 1 year because they came out, they scouted me while I was playing in college. And unfortunately now with what I do, I don't exactly have the scheduling ability to commit to a team. I played in an open men's league in New Mexico as well for the Albuquerque Brujos, and loved it. But now, in order to, I'm training for MMA. I want to get the stupid beat out of me while I'm still young. So as you can see here, we'll get a couple close-ups here. I got kicked in the head a couple times yesterday. I got a nice little cut here. But yeah, we had a Muay Thai boxing session last night at Nova MMA here in Arlington, and it's a blast.
Adam, I had no idea when I asked you about rugby it was going to somehow turn into a conversation about politics and the founding of this country.
I'm sorry. I really see this as symbolic. I see the revival of rugby in the United States as just one of those things that's shifting in the culture that gives me hope. And I've seen it since I started playing rugby in college. I guess it was 2001. And in 11 years, rugby has taken off, and of course at the college level, it's really come into its own. But at an adult level too, for people who are, who are doing it on their own. The sad thing is that when you have the entrenchment, and it's in large part thanks to government subsidization of sports teams, of stadiums, and of corporations in the form of the NFL and all the broadcast networks and so on and so forth that bring the money into the sport. It's hard. This is how barriers to entry are erected. And in the sports market, you have all these huge barriers to entry that are keeping out rugby. And I fully believe that if we had a true free market in this country, and you know how libertarians love to say that, we would have a lot more rugby players and a lot less football players and a lot more people who believe in that spirit of freedom that rugby promotes and football kills.
That's really funny. And, you know, when you look at the pads or the protection that we use in American football, and you compare that to those of you who don't know much about rugby, actually, let me dig up a clip of some people, some Kiwis, playing rugby, and we'll put that in right now so you can see what it's really like. Watch this. So you see what I mean. There's no pads, blood everywhere. It's a mess. That's what rugby is about. American football, the pads and the protection and everything. It's you know, I wouldn't say it's a wussy sport, but it's definitely a lot more nanny state-ish than rugby.
Absolutely. No, absolutely no. And to call it nanny state-ish is absolutely perfect, because it also is providing a great illustration of how destructive the nanny state can be. Because everybody goes, oh, football, that's a dangerous, violent sport. People get serious injuries, and it's true. And in rugby, you get a lot more injuries, but because it's body-to-body contact, you get a lot less severe injuries. So with football, what you end up with is worse concussions, broken necks, seriously broken bones, and it happens in rugby. But in rugby, the very, very severe injuries are much more rare. But with football, because of the pads, because of the helmets, because people use their helmets as spears, you know, you end up with a lot more of the severe injuries and a less, honestly, a less exciting sport, a less physical sport overall. I mean, in rugby, it's 15 guys on the field on either side that can go, you know, body to body at any point and be in a test of strength. Whereas in football, it's all choreographed and so on and so forth. And you have, you know, the impacts are actually they're a lot less per game. So
yeah,
there's the nanny state in action in football.
Right, exactly. Let's quickly. I got a whole bunch of questions here. We're running out of time, so let's run through rapid fire through a few of these. One of these questions is quite interesting, and that is, how do you stay motivated when we seem to be in a winless situation? Ron Paul doesn't appear to be doing well. We're going to have a little show on the delegates in a little while that'll explain the delegate procedure and give people a lot of hope about what's really going on behind the scenes. But when it doesn't look so great, we don't win a single state in Super Tuesday, how do you stay motivated?
Well, that's a good question, because it's to be demotivated by these things, to be demotivated by, I mean, really anything that we see in the world today that's happening on a day-to-day basis or a month-to-month or even a year-to-year basis, I think is to be myopic. And the way I stay motivated is by taking the long view of human history. That makes me extremely optimistic. You know, it's a process of 2 steps forward and 1 step backwards, and that happens on many different levels at the same time. So you could say that, you know, the starting of the Federal Reserve in 1913 was the start of a major step backwards that we're still in. But during that time, you know, we had a women's rights movement, a civil rights movement, and a gay rights movement. And I'm not advocating for any of the ways that those have been entrenched in government by any means, please. But don't misunderstand me. But what those represent for humanity working its way towards a society of perfect liberty, because we are evolving. And those who are able to engage intellectually as opposed to by force are the ones that will survive and reproduce, even in today's world, more efficiently. than those who are inclined to turn to violence as a means of conflict resolution. And so that's happening whether you like it or not. That's my analysis. When I look at human history, it's a march towards an ideal society, or at least a voluntary society, only because we know that that's more efficient, that that's more effective, that that provides for survival and reproduction better than violence. And so I think the arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice, it bends towards freedom, and it bends towards a voluntary society. So I'm able to take any of these, what I see as relatively superficial setbacks, and put them in that perspective, and that helps me stay motivated.
That's really good. All right, this is an important question, and one that somebody asked this question, others asked it as well, got many, many likes as well. So it's obviously important to a lot of people. Will the men and women in the armed forces fire upon U.S. citizens if they are ordered to?
That's a really good question, and it really points to the importance of the work of the group Oath Keepers, oathkeepers.org. You know, I can't say enough about what they do in encouraging people who are on active duty and in the police force as well to honor their oaths to the Constitution over any illegal orders they may receive. And obviously, except in, I mean, I can't imagine what extraneous possible circumstances it might be justified or legitimate or legal for any of for any of the troops to turn their guns on the American people. I think that it's increasingly rare or increasingly unlikely because of that awareness, and because that awareness is spreading. You know, just the other day I was at the dog park here and ran into an active duty guy from the old guard, and we started talking about Iran, and I was really encouraged to see that he has a perspective that is reflective of the awareness of the internet, for lack of a better way of describing it. He's not stupid. He's not brainwashed. He understands that there's another narrative out there, that the government propaganda is just one sick, twisted side of the story. And so I'm pretty confident in saying that no, it won't happen on a widespread level. I think we can say that now, and I think that should be very encouraging for people, especially those of us who challenge the government, to know that if something happens, we're the only ones who are going to get killed. But that really, I think with the connectedness that we have today, the prevalence of cell phones even, if you told an active, I mean, in order for it to happen, in order for, say, a unit of the U.S. military to be deployed against the American people, to be killing and shooting at or confiscating firearms from the American people, you have to isolate them to a certain degree. You have to lie to them. You have to put them in a situation where they are disconnected from their fellow Americans and they don't understand the implications of the Constitution that they swore to support and defend. And that's just not possible anymore. So I think
hang on, Adam. There was the instance with Hurricane Katrina there where the military was going house to house confiscating people's firearms.
Absolutely.
And they did that because they knew who had registered firearms, or they knew exactly the homes to go to get them. So they did it then. Why would they not do it now?
Well, first of all, in Hurricane Katrina, there was one Army unit that decided not to do that stood up. It was actually led by a staff sergeant who is a member of Oath Keepers and said, we're not going to do this. I think that was incredibly powerful. And I don't mean to downplay the significance overall of firearms confiscation during Hurricane Katrina, but that's compared to what we're talking about, compared to what we're looking at as a possibility for widespread gun confiscation. Hurricane Katrina was still, a relatively limited incident, and what they were able to do was isolate enough soldiers to do that by saying Hurricane Katrina is an extraneous or an extenuating circumstance. And they were able to convince a small group of soldiers to go out and do that. Now, if they said, Hurricane Katrina's here, we need to activate every single National Guard unit in the entire United States and confiscate firearms from every single American, like, come on, that wouldn't fly. So like I said, it could happen at Ruby Ridge, it could happen at Waco, it could happen in Katrina, and Katrina was a horrific example of that. But again, those are isolated incidents, and I don't mean that they're isolated in that, like, hey, we need to dismiss them and government's okay, we can trust government. But they're not widespread. And when people raise the specter of will the troops be turned on the American people, my point is that it won't get worse than that, because it is no longer possible to isolate the troops more than that, to make more than that. I mean, it would really take some incredibly extenuating circumstances for us to see it on anything of a larger scale than what happened in Katrina.
Well, this relates to the next question, and this is: does Adam feel that this revolution can be won through peaceful means, or will there be a defining moment like our forefathers had?
I think it can only be won through peaceful means. And that's not to say that violence is never justified or never maybe required to repel a certain aggressor. But that's not what's going to win this revolution. That's not what's going to complete the paradigm shift. That is ultimately not what is going to rid us of statism. It is going to be the cumulative decisions of the free market, of the people deciding, hey, government's a bad deal and we don't want in anymore. And we are, as agorists, all of us, slowly reducing our dependence on the state, creating systems that exist outside of the state that will render it obsolete. That's what's going to win the revolution. Now, that's not to say that and I want to put that in the historical context of the Revolutionary War, because the revolution itself, in a sense, was not won by the war. It was won before the war. I mean, even as the founders themselves said, it was won by a change. I think it was John Adams who said that the revolution was won before the war began because it was a revolution that took place in the minds and hearts of the founders in the decision that they should be free. And in the same sense, that is what will win our revolution. Now, there may be some violence. There may be significant violence. But that will not be the revolution. That will be the consequence of the establishment resisting the revolution, resisting the paradigm shift. And should we need to defend ourselves? Absolutely. I will be ready to. And I stand ready. I stand armed. I keep myself fit, in part because I believe it's essential to defending freedom, is to have that, to be able to do that. But if I had to make a single prediction, I don't think our revolution is going to culminate in an act of violence, in the sense that the Revolutionary War could be seen as a culmination of the American Revolution, and even that is kind of a glorification of the violence that I don't think is helpful to what we're doing today.
Right. One last question, and then let's talk about the new march that you're going to have. And this question is about the latest viral meme that's going around now, and that's Kony.
Kony,
you have an opinion on Kony, so give us your opinion. What do you think is really going on here? What's the inside scoop?
Man, did I just say Kony 2012 while being recorded? I hope someone better not take that out of context. I really admire the makers of this video for what they have put together as a piece of propaganda to pull on the heartstrings and manipulate people. And when I first saw it, I was like, yes, I want to do it. I want to get the kit. I want to wear the bracelet. Can I just say that I want there to not be child soldiers? I want to be a part of that. I want to express that. And yeah, I feel regret that I haven't been more engaged on the issue. But what that campaign represents is something really anti-freedom, really pretty disturbing when their answer to violence is essentially more violence. Oh my gosh, children are being stolen from their homes in Africa to fight in wars. And I'm not saying that that's not one of the worst possible moral transgressions that human beings are capable of, but your answer is to have the American government steal from the American people, or borrow in our names and steal from our unborn children to fund an intervention where we're going to go and turn it into another Iraq, Afghanistan, or Vietnam. I mean, remember, it was Vietnam that started with the advisors. And when we saw last year Obama first deploy advisors to Uganda, we were like, yep, that's how Vietnam started. And to see that now there's this massive PR campaign around this viral video to have another intervention, to send more troops into Africa, I'm really bothered by that, and I'm really concerned. I wish the campaign almost had been set up in a way that made it possible to say, we're just raising awareness, and we hope that something will be done. And I'm even that I'm a pragmatist, in the sense that I understand that police departments have a monopoly on providing for public safety in my community, and if something happens, There are situations where I'm going to call the police, and it's like, yeah, there's certain situations with national security where you want to call in the government, and that's great. I can see that, and if the campaign is successful and they get an American intervention in Uganda, there's a possibility that what they will get would be what they would get in a free market, where you would see a different solution to this problem. But I highly, highly, highly doubt it. And the premise of this is morally bankrupt. So let me just throw out a couple of solutions as alternatives that I came up with that would be free market solutions to this issue. Because, it's easy to get sucked into this and say, well, for a kid with a hammer, every problem is a nail. But like I was saying about this organization, if instead they could raise the money themselves to do it, if they said, we are going to hire a mercenary, we are going to hire a sniper from Blackwater, to go out and shoot Kony in the head through the forest. We're going to sneak up on him, and we're going to spend millions of dollars, and we're going to do it, and we're just going to take him out because we know it's justified. There have been legal proceedings, we've documented it, and no one is going to object because we are doing the right thing. I could be on board. I might have more respect for that. I'd have a lot more respect for that. But I've even come up with a couple solutions that are non-violent free market solutions that would be better. First of all, one of the things in the video talked about child soldiers that were defecting from the Army. What if we surrounded the LRA and provided refugee facilities for children to escape, to be educated and provide for their basic needs? If this organization, Invisible Children Inc., was actually cared about improving their well-being as opposed to grandstanding, you'd be seeing solutions like that. But that raises a couple of problems with the organization itself, Invisible Children, because they have one of the worst ratings for taking money that they've raised and actually delivering services. This is a big operation. They spent over $8 million last year, and most of it's on the superficial crap, the stuff that you're disturbed about when you see nonprofit organizations wasting your money on. So first of all, there's that problem with the organization itself. Whether or not the people are well-intentioned in a free market where people paid attention to these kinds of things before donating to charities a little bit more, they'd be out of business. The other thing is, it's kind of devoid of a real good historical understanding of what's happening there, and the fact that Joseph Kony is kind of already on his way out, that his army is rapidly diminishing in strength at this point, is a shadow of what it used to be. But the other major problem, and not to dismiss that, but when you have someone and you go, oh my God, they are committing these horrible atrocities, you got to give us your money, you got to join our campaign, you got to spread this message, and then like right behind you with the government of Uganda, you have a system that is perpetuating 10 times the violence, 10 times the crimes, and actually was doing child soldier abduction recruitment before Joseph Kony. You have to wonder, like, wait a second, you're pulling the wool over my eyes here somewhere. And one of the things I'm concerned about is that this is somehow connected to the Obama re-election campaign. For better or for worse, directly or not, I think Obama has an opportunity here that this has created to play the savior and go in and you know what he does in Uganda might be a good outcome, but it's going to reinforce statism. It's going to set us back as a species by reinforcing this idea that we need government to solve problems. We need to turn to the authorities every time something goes wrong, and that Barack Obama can be some kind of savior. And that's what really has me worried about this campaign is, I guess one that Obama would be able to turn this into a part of his re-election effort by starting another war, as presidents love to do right before re-election campaigns, or right before the actual voting, and that it's going to have unintended consequences that are going to be far worse than the existing situation. Although, as horrific as things are there right now, it's hard to imagine that they would be worse. But if you want an idea of how much worse they could be, all you have to do is go look at Iraq and Afghanistan.
Right. Yeah, that's so true. So military veterans really want to get involved in this whole campaign. There's a lot that couldn't make it to the last march.
This
campaign,
got
another march
not
coming,
Kony 2012, right? Veterans for Ron Paul.
Exactly. But you're going to have another march Tell us about that, but also, in telling us about that, do you think it's going to be impacted at all by this new bill, HR 347?
Well, HR 347 is the bill that makes protesting a felony if you're anywhere near anybody with Secret Service protection. So if that is signed into law, it's on Obama's desk right now, metaphorically speaking, it's on Obama's desk. If he should sign it before the RNC, then it's just going to be one more law that we would be protesting. But we're not protesting at the RNC. And we formed Veterans for Liberty Super PAC now to support this project, Veterans for Ron Paul 2012. So please, if you want to support us, check it out. RonPaulIsTheChoiceOfTheTroops.com. And the event that we're planning, the March on the RNC, is really going to make what we did at the White House look like a tea party. It's going to make it look like a little warm-up. And what we're going to have at the RNC is going to make that look insignificant by comparison. We had a brigade raised by two veterans, myself and Nathan Cox, in a month and a half for the March on the White House. Now we have 6 months, and our goal is to raise a division of active duty troops and veterans for Ron Paul. And it looks like we're going to be able to do it. All the signs are there. The momentum is good. The framework is right. People are joining up. They want to be a part of this. And what we're asking people to do is to come not for a march, but to come for what is going to be the largest military lobbying effort on behalf of any presidential candidate in American history. We are there to ensure that Ron Paul is our next commander-in-chief and receives the required number of delegate votes at the Republican National Convention in order to do that. So we're asking people to stay for the entire time. It's August 27th to the 30th. We are going to have a FOB Domestic Defense, that's Forward Operating Base for you civvies. That's what we, that's the latest military term for camps abroad. We had a FOBs in all throughout Iraq and Afghanistan. That's what we refer to them as. So we've got FOB Domestic Defense. We're going to be setting up from the 26th to the 31st. And if we raise enough money, we hope to be providing full room and board for anybody who wants to come there who's a veteran, who can provide proof of service, at least a cot in an air-conditioned GP tent, and some MREs if nothing else. But we are going to be renting at least a large site that we can have as a campsite where people can park RVs and put up tents. We'll have shower facilities, things like that, so that they can come and be comfortable and not have to pay out of pocket for these things. We're also trying to raise money right now to cover transportation and organizing buses to get people there so that they can, so a lot of the veterans who can't afford it, a lot of the active duty guys. I mean, we have active duty troops who are on food stamps now. I mean, how sick is that? So we're trying to raise the money to make sure that their voice can be heard, that all of the previous attempts and in the regulations, the way it's embedded to keep the voices of the troops silent, we're going to overcome that. We're going to get past that, and the voices of the troops will be heard at the RNC. And the reason this is so critical is that going into the convention, Ron Paul will not have the majority of delegates necessary to clinch the nomination. The good news is neither will anybody else. And so after the first round of voting, there's going to be a brokered convention. And in the second round of voting, as opposed to the first, where delegates are required by state and party rules to vote for the candidate as determined by their primaries or caucuses, in the second round they are unbound and are allowed to vote their conscience. And we're gonna be there with the message that Ron Paul is the choice of the troops. And if the GOP wants to live up to its rhetoric and be the party that supports the troops and supports national defense, they're going to nominate Ron Paul. Otherwise, they're going to have to do it and do it right in front of the whole world and show the world that instead of the message of the grassroots of the party, the base of the party, the Ron Paul supporters in the party, that instead they have the attitude of Henry Kissinger, who said military men are like dumb animals to be used as pawns in our foreign policy, because that's the mentality of every other candidate running.
Right. Just give us again the actual dates and how can people find out about it?
Sure.
Give us the web address.
The Republican National Convention will be happening from the 27th to the 30th. And we will be marching at least once in a massive
What
formation.
month, Adam? What month is that?
That's in August, excuse me. August 27th to August 30th. So on Monday, August 27th, will be our first primary action. Then hopefully we'll have a second one done when the timing is announced for the second round of voting to coincide with that. And we will have our forward operating base available from the 26th to the 31st. And we have a Facebook event that is got all of the information. That's where most of it's going to be. But the way to find that, to get plugged in, is to go to our main website, ronpaulisthechoiceofthetroops.com. I'm also hosting at forums.adamversustheman.com an organizing section for Veterans for Ron Paul, for people to get plugged in. And it's an incredible way that this is coming together in this day and age, this sort of open source organizing where we create the framework and encourage people to fill in and really take charge and take some initiative. So I encourage people to check that out, get involved and help plan in this thing. But like I said, this is going to be a lobbying effort. This is not a protest. So technically HR 347 shouldn't apply, but we are there to be a part of the RNC. We are Republicans who want to lobby the leaders of our party to listen to the grassroots. And we plan on doing a lot of sign waves, passing out literature, talking to individuals on the inside, talking to delegates. We hope to have a vendor's booth and a press pass for Adam versus the Man. But we're going to be out there at every single avenue of approach to that convention with signs. Another veteran for Ron Paul. Make it undeniable that Ron Paul is the choice of the troops.
Excellent. And for those of you who don't know, Adam actually has his own internet TV show, just like I've got Ron Paul FLIX show. This was inspired and motivated a lot by Adam's own show, Adam versus the Man. Tell us about the show and how people can connect with that.
Well, if I may, first a brief history. When I ran for Congress and lost in 2010 in New Mexico, I was one of those candidates that just couldn't shut up when the race was over. So I got a radio show. And right as I was about to get fired from that for not selling enough ads, I got picked up as a TV show. And Adam versus the Man was briefly on RT America, and I learned a lot about that. But believe it or not, when you come in on the bottom rung of the TV ladder, there's not a lot of money in it. And so after I was canceled 4 months later for political reasons, I decided that if I got the same kind of offer again, and a lot of people are saying, you got to pitch the show to G4 or Spike TV, it'd be perfect if they had a political show. And I said, yeah, I'd rather be independent. I'd rather have the full flexibility that the internet makes possible. I'd rather be ad-free, not be beholden to any sponsors except those who I choose. And right now, we're doing the show completely ad-free, supported by the viewers. I try to upload a video every day. I'm pretty good about that. I actually average well over one per day, if you look at the totals there. And we're looking to expand to a regular nightly newscast format in the next few weeks. And in a couple of weeks, even before that, we're going to be doing a 5-day-a-week podcast. So please stay tuned for that. Please check out adamversustheman.com. And if you want to support me, really appreciate it if you become a monthly subscriber.
Excellent. Thank you so much for coming on Ron Paul FLIX, and it's really been a pleasure, and I hope you've really enjoyed this extended interview with Adam Kokesh.
America is in trouble.
Washington is a disgrace.
Government has become too big. It's overtaxing, overspending.
We need to change direction.
We really need change.
We can't afford to make the same mistakes we've made in the past.
Mitt Romney's reputation as a flip-flopper.
He went the other way when he got paid to go the other way.
There is need for economic stimulus.
It's about serial hypocrisy.
This election is about trust.
There's been one true consistent candidate, and that's Dr. Ron Paul.
Ron Paul has been so consistent from the very beginning.
He seems like a more honest candidate.
He tells the truth about what he believes, whether you like it or not.
He's never once voted for a tax increase, never once voted for an unbalanced budget.
Ron Paul's plan is bold, cuts 5 departments. It's what we need.
When he says he's going to cut $1 trillion in the first year, I believe it.
If you don't like how things are going and you're tired of politicians, he's something different.
Ron Paul.
Ron Paul.
Ron Paul.
Ron Paul
is the one we've been looking for.
I'm Ron Paul, and I approve this message.